Good morning. Now, Moses Kajwang is the senator-elect of Homa Bay after so much vocal campaigning and opposition to his nomination by the Orange Democratic Movement. The victory was rather huge, with a landslide of over 80,000 votes between him and the second contestant, Philip Okundi. Now, a lot of people did not expect that. Well, others did expect that. The question is, what does this result, what are the implications of this result to Raila Odinga and the Orange Democratic Movement? In the studio this morning are people who are experts in this politics, and they will help us to decipher or explain or put in context this victory. First, Dr. Adam Zolo from the Department of Political Science at the University of Nairobi. Karibu. And of course, a regular analyst, Professor Peter Kagwanja, also a political scientist, but the CEO of the Africa Policy Institute. Karibuni.
Asante.
Let me start with you, Kagwanja, because, not because, did you expect this victory?
Yes, I did. I did. Of course, not the margin, but yes, I did expect it, because this is Ruo Nyanza. And our politics is very deeply regional, and identity is a very important factor in shaping this. Particularly if there's a sense of threat, then the stakes goes higher, and the results are what you have seen. I think it is the question of playing the threat, and I think the mistake that was done by whoever was pushing the Kundis and others is to make them appear like they can get somewhere, because that literally raised the stakes unnecessarily.
So nothing surprising for you?
No, nothing surprising.
Adams, yourself, did you expect the victory, and by this margin, seeing that there had been predictions of the end of the Odinga dynasty, as it were?
I expected it. I think that, you see, politics is about perception. And the people who are crafting the perception were trying everything, hoping that that perception would change the opinion on the ground. But as you saw, ODM and the party leader did not give in to that. They went out to ensure that once and for all, this mirage that ODM is dying in Nyanza, that Raila Odinga is losing grip, yes, that there's a divide between South and Central Nyanza, yes, that the rebels are gaining ground. Statistics don't lie. That's what has happened.
Did it benefit, really, Moses Kajwang's candidature that Raila personally went there? And if he hadn't gone, perhaps the battle would have been very close fought, and with the potential he would have lost, or if won by a minor margin.
That's true, in the sense that when you look at those votes are not necessarily for Moses Kajwang, the individual, because he's not even a registered voter there. Nobody even knew about Moses Kajwang. His brother was known, Tom. That vote is for ODM and Raila Odinga.
Would you agree, Professor?
I think there was a personal threat to Raila Odinga, and it was palpable. You could feel it, that there's a threat in Nyanza. The amount of violence that you have witnessed in that election is unprecedented. You know, it's only remind you of Kasarani, the men in black, and it's in Homa Bay where we have had men in white. And in that case, I think the stakes became so high because of the factors that Adam has mentioned, that the affront by the rebels, and for the first time, the lines became clearly drawn between the rebels versus the Odinga dynasty, to the point that you see, you can identify who are the leaders of the troop. And that had also national implications, because if the rebels you gained significant ground, then it would be the beginning of an avalanche that would eventually see 2017 as as a foregone conclusion that Raila is not a factor in that. So you needed to, in other words, let me put it graphically. Yeah. Rome was on fire. Rome was burning, and Raila had to take back all the troops to Homa Bay.
He didn't release many fire engines, only one.
No, all of them were there.
What Kagwenja is not telling you is that the purported violence was not directed at Okundi. This purported violence was directed at Moses. And that's the perception that was meant to be created. That Moses is being rejected. But there were just some few hired goons, as you can see from the statistics. Moses won overwhelmingly. So if the violence was directed against you, people did not want you, that you were imposed. But how can you win such a landslide?
But there's a protest vote. You know, the registered voters in Homa Bay are 330,000.
That happens in every by-election, even in the Bungoma by-election.
Less than 50.
That's okay, but this is not less than 50%, it's a third.
No.
100,000, 127 plus 27. I mean, we're talking about...
From 430 estimated.
It's not 430, it's
380 or thereabouts.
That's normal in a by-election.
It's about 50% turnout, slightly over, which is not very far from the actual election, which was slightly about 60.
I don't think there's anything in what Peter Kagwenja is saying. In by-elections, you expect that. And statistically, what you look in terms of those who have turned out is the proportionality. You don't go and look at the turnout.
What do you make of Governor Kidero, who stuck his hand out and said, I'm in this group, and those other 2 MPs or 3 who said they're rebels? What do you make of them? What's the future?
You see, the media, a section of the media, not your station, a section of the media has tried to create that there is a Raila Kidero battle. Nothing could be further from the truth. Kidero is no match for Raila Odinga. Kidero does not have any political base. In fact, in Nairobi, Kidero is a governor because of ODM. He wouldn't be governor without ODM. And in fact, what Kidero has is what you can call financial muscle, not political muscle. And if you go down the political history of this country, when KANU was using a lot of money in 1997, in Central and Nyanza, they would tell you, we are going to the hotel to eat, but we know where we are going to vote. And there was a lot of money in Homa Bay. People ate, but they knew where they would vote.
So, coming to Kagwenja, maybe you should answer that question as well. This, Adams does not agree that there was any contest between Kidero and Raila. But Kidero had thrown his weight behind Philip Okundi and actually rejected the nomination of Moses Kajwang as unprocedural, as it was. Anyway, there were issues around that. Isn't this a loss for Kidero in his attempt to gain political mileage and take part of the constituency that Raila commands?
I don't think so. In the first place, that the fact that somebody stood up and said, we are backing so-and-so, as somebody wrote in the Star the day before yesterday, I think it's Ochuotho, there's a coercing force within Nyanza that thinks that democracy need to be taken to that place. Because what you're saying is this kind of monopolistic politics that need to be broken to the point that even though ODM can have the kind of dominance that you have in central Kenya with the TNA, in Mount Kenya region you see a completely different politics where the challenge of the dominant party is there. In Meru there is no TNA. In other parts like Nyeri there is no TNA, it's GNU and so on. Even though there is a general understanding that Uhuru Kenyatta is a kingpin in that area in terms of the TNA. In Nyanza you don't have that, and that's what you've started seeing with Okundi. So this is not really a loss as such. I think it's a beginning of a shift.
I think your comparison seems to me a bit stretched, because if you're taking the Meru and the central, let's say tribally, let's call it Kikuyu Meru. There was no resistance, in fact, or split of votes within the Kikuyu constituency that was backing Uhuru. Just the way you would say in Nyanza, there is no split in the constituency, low constituency supporting Raila.
What I am saying is that you have started seeing the semblance of some serious challenge. I mean, it's serious. 27,000 votes is not a minor. I mean, it's not a minor vote in a region that has been monopolistic.
Right.
It is the same case. When most of us were shocked when we found in Nyeri, the governor, the senator are not from TNA, they are from GNU. Yes. Only the presidential vote was unanimous. As far as the party is concerned, there was no unanimity. And that tells you that democracy is beginning to play out. I think nobody really expected, and I said it at the beginning.
What do you think
I think Gagwanya is trying to revise his story.
Answer that.
How?
In the view of what Ochodo wrote,
yeah.
He had said, vote against Moses.
Raila must lose for
so that we can have democracy.
Yes.
Exactly. Now, look at it this way.
Yeah.
I think the Kagwanjas of this world who come and create an impression that there is monopoly. Monopoly, you can only have monopoly when, for example, you go and say there is only one party by law in Kenya. Or you go and say there's only one party by law in Luola. We know that anybody has the right to join any party, be it Ford Kenya, and there's a Ford Kenya MP in Luola, be it PDP, there's a governor of PDP in Luola, be it Wiper, there's an MP of Wiper in Luola. But the reason why I'm saying he's revising history, in 1997, when Raila Odinga stood with the National Development Party, James Orengo was elected on a Ford Kenya ticket in Ugenya. Joe Donde was elected on a Ford Kenya ticket in Gem. Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o decamped from SDP and went to SDP. And in 2002, James Orengo, there was no presidential candidate in Luola. Raila was backed in Kibaki. James Orengo stood for the presidency on an SDP ticket. What other democracy do you need in Luola? And Luos chose not to vote their own Luo, and instead voted Kikuyu. Now, what is trying to say that there is democracy coming in Luola? You see, Raila Odinga, if you want to make headlines in this country, just oppose Raila Odinga. And therefore you'll get the headlines like battle between Raila and Kidero. You'll get the headlines like Okundi is a strong challenge. But when the statistics come,
yes, Dr. Law, are you saying that the Kidero versus Raila contest is a creation of the media?
Both the Kidero and the media.
It's not in real. No? Haven't we seen Kidero making forays that seem to show that he's interested in cultivating a constituency that can enable him to go up?
There's nothing wrong with him being interested. Why don't we usually hear Martha Karua versus Uhuru, Peter Kenneth versus Uhuru?
We have had it.
In fact,
we have had it. We have
they trying to make
but do you get the same headlines?
Making those gains against.
Do you see the same headlines?
No, the Kirinyaga by-election that brought Gitari Choki to power was essentially posed as
but was it covered the same way?
What? They were covered in almost the same way.
We can go back to
but
let me Kibaki, at that time it was Uhuru.
It was Uhuru versus Mother, as successors to Kibaki. But let me put it this way. I know Olo will talk about us rewriting history, call it revisionist or whatever, but history is just about looking at the facts.
Yeah, and that's what I've given. Just challenge any of them.
Yes, but now, 1997 is a decade ago. The reality of the matter today, at least because of the 2 terms that Raila Odinga has vied as a presidential candidate, the total impact of that is a democratic deficit in Luo Nyanza. Now, talking to the so-called rebels now today.
What do you mean democratic deficit?
Deficit in the sense that there is no competition. That's why you're finding this kind of greenwash, the whitewash.
Because is that democratic? People voting it's their mind.
Ochuodo, Kidero, Tuju, Okudi, and a whole age, even MPs, sitting MPs today, they were backing Okudi on the basis that it is a way of expanding the democratic
And
space.
the people have told them no.
So there's no democratic space. They have crossed the
come
thing
on,
again.
come on. Unless you don't know the meaning
okay.
of democracy.
Unless
you don't understand
Adams,
the
let
meaning
me
of
mediate this one. Let Kagwanja define what, in his perspective, is democratic
democracy.
space, and how it is achieved, or how it is created.
The democratic space is where you don't have an when we talk about Kenya as having been a one-party state for the better part of the of the 1990s, what you meant was not that for up before 1982 that the party was declared one party. It was de facto. What you see in Nyanza is a de facto one-party state.
But that's the choice of
one party state.
But to what do you attribute that?
I attribute it to an overbearing dynastic politics.
How?
That makes it very difficult for anyone to rise. Remember the joke that if you want to go to
let me put it this way. Does the dynasty block, obstruct, stop the others from emerging or playing?
Yes, it does.
In your view?
It is Tifo's politics, because if you have to go to Kisumu as Tuju, you have to wear a helmet.
No, I think that is...
Let me hear now, Adams.
I think a whole person going by the title professor saying that is really, really surprising.
It is not.
Look at it this way.
Yes.
You have been involved in an election.
Yes.
People come and campaign. Like Raila went to campaign.
Yes. Came and campaigned.
Like Ofundi was campaigning.
Yeah.
Like Moses was campaigning. But the moment, and this is what democracy is about, the moment you go into that booth, it is secret. It's not even Mulolongo where people will see where you voted. So if he's trying to say that people are intimidated and they wear a helmet, what about when I go to that booth? Nobody is seeing where I'm voting. They won't know where I'm voting. And that's the whole essence of democracy. And that's why it is secret ballot.
Is it possible that in this case, for example, there could have been people who wanted to vote, but they thought that they could be intimidated, threatened, so they did not come, they stayed away.
That was my point.
As to generate these results.
And that was my point. That all the violence, and I'm challenging Kagwanja to give me one incident in which Okundi, Rabongo, Alila were stoned. Instead, all the violence was against Moses. So it is ODM supporters who should have been intimidated because they were the ones who were being stoned.
Okay, let me
challenge that.
The election results are clearly going to set a certain precedent. First, there was a real challenge to Odinga's preference.
Yes.
Take it or leave it. 27,000 votes is quite something.
Yeah.
And the election seemed to have been very well fought out between the candidates, which would seem to suggest that that monopoly will somehow loosened of ODM as the party, or not particularly the party, individuals can stand on any other party and they can get audience. That is.
Let me explain to you why the 27,000 votes.
Yes.
First and foremost, if Okudi stood on a more established party that has grassroots and networks, right, let's say TNA or URP, he would have had the benefit of, the structure in order to mobilize his votes. Because election has two parts to it. There is the campaign part, selling the message, and there is the bringing the vote home. And the bringing the vote home is solely a responsibility of a party structure. Now, you cannot have a stronger party structure opposing ODM in Nyanza. And that's why he went to this anonymous party, so that he's not identified with the national competition. In other words, you cannot have national competition in Nyanza. You can only have local politics. Local competition. This is what I'm calling democratic deficit.
Let me give you an example.
Somebody says this. I'm just getting feedback from people. Furious messages coming in.
I know. I know.
Somebody says, and you can of course participate in this conversation. What are your perspectives about what happened in Homa Bay? Was it a free and fair election? And what do the results? What is the import of those results to both ODM, Raila Odinga, and Evans Kidero, who had thrown his hat in the ring via Philip Okundi? Now, somebody says, Professor Kagwanja, democracy does not equal opposing Odinga. Your theory about Odinga is false. Be honest. Accept that Raila is a popular leader. This is Kimani in Kiambu. Then somebody else says, Luo people are very rigid. They're not dynamic.
Yes.
So again, do you blame the people? Do you blame the leadership? Do you blame the
Let me
dynasty?
just give you an example.
And then somebody else also says, what is the problem with Nyanza? The people there are happy. When Kenyans overwhelmingly support the constitution, or I think he meant the coalition, when they vote for Kibaki, is it democracy? So shida ni nini? If people have decided to vote for somebody or have stood behind him, why is that being perceived as undemocratic? Those are questions that are definitely addressing Kagwanja.
Let me just say something.
Then you will deal
You know,
with
and I'm seeing you, Makali, you are also...
Pro Kagwanja.
No, not pro Kagwanja. You are falling into the Kagwanja trap. if the votes,
yes.
if let's say, and you guys were talking of 80,000, that margin is 100,000. If the votes had been maybe 20,000, you would now be hearing in this forum there was a real race. Now you see a Spain on 27,000. You're trying to say that this 27,000 means a lot. Even in the presidential race, whether it is where, you never get a totality. But let's leave that. I think when Kagwanja talks of disenfranchising or non-democratic tendency, no big non-democratic tendency ever happened than what happened in Gatundu South, where people had already nominated a candidate. Then the candidate behind the scenes, after the people have no recourse, goes and declares that I've stepped down, and IEBC accepts, without leaving recourse to the people. At least in Homa Bay, the people voted for who they want. What other democracy would you need compared to Gatundu South? If you can answer.
Does that election in Homa Bay have any reflection on what might happen in Kajiado Central?
Well, I think Kajiado Central is a different ballgame in the sense that TNA or Jubilee controls Kajiado MPs. I mean, the majority MPs. This was the only seat that ODM had, and also the fact that they have the governor.
And the governor?
Yes, but I think that the fact that Memus defected from Jubilee, I think has brought a new complexion to the race. And I think unlike Homa Bay, where it is one-sided, I think that in Kajiado it's going to be a titanic battle. It can go either.
And that's what we are saying. If you compare, I take your example for Gatundu, but Gatundu was a non-starter. I mean, the de facto, member of parliament for Gatundu is the president. I mean, everything else is...
So he did allow them.
It's not a question of allowing. Even today, if you want changes in Gatundu, I mean, this is his home turf. It was the same
you
thing
realize, Kagwanja, though,
yes.
that even initially, the elders and the majority, not majority, but substantial number of people had come up to oppose Moses Kuria running for Gatundu. They even asked him to step out so that the other gentleman, I forget his name, could take the ticket.
No, the real competition was not any other gentleman against Kuria. It was the lady, because you are likely to have the sympathy vote. And I think the lady was defeated in the nominations and so on. She accepted, and it was settled. Are
you saying the other candidate wasn't strong?
I think he wasn't very strong. I mean, it was not bought out. I mean, do you have that evidence? This idea. I mean, if you bought a bottle of wine, or a glass of wine,
I said it with a light touch.
Yeah. but let's get to Homa Bay, because there is an argument that we are making here, and this cannot get lost. I mean,
yes. Give me time to rebut. Don't let him get away.
The point is that for the first time, we found a coalescing of voices, opinions, and people coming behind those opinions. And the general opinion is that there is a democratic deficit in Nyanza. Now, whether they have succeeded to roll back this, what they are calling the deficit, is another matter. You can technically account for that, for the 27,000. I personally would have expected 50. But when I look at the structure Okud had, I mean, he didn't have the infrastructure of running an election at the county level. If it was a constituency, the vote would have been closer. But in a county, for a person that party has no presence there. He simply went and dusted, something.
Yeah, but Okundi has a presence there. He's a former member of parliament.
He has a
very well-known person.
Yes,
the director of the National Election Board of
I'm not
ODM.
talking about Okundi as a person. We're talking about party politics, where you have the structures which you guard your votes, which you, during the tarrying agents and all.
Are you trying to say the votes were stolen?
Well, I mean, you can't rule that out. I have not said it.
There were allegations.
There are allegations to that effect. And in any case,
the allegation is the press.
Okundi can't even prove that they were not stolen because there was nobody to tell him they are stolen because he didn't have agents.
Are you sure? No,
He can't.
Maybe someone Okundi, you have something with Okundi. Because it seems you know something that we don't know.
About Okundi, I just know that he's a very successful Kenyan citizen.
Know that he didn't have agents? Because it seems you know something that people don't know.
Maendeleo can't know. I have ran in this country. I've ran in this country. I've ran 9 by-elections.
Yes.
So I know what it takes to win an election. It's not just running around and bringing back home. I ran the referendum. I was the director who ran the referendum. And I knew what I needed in order to bring 70% of that. Okundi did not have, and could not have, he couldn't have what it takes to win Homa Bay. So and I said at the beginning, yes, I never expected him to win because he cannot have the electoral machine to bring the votes back. He can have the appeal, talk to the people, yes, but bringing the vote to the ballot box is a completely different game. He didn't have that game. He could not have had that game. And I think
isn't it true to say that therefore the electors in Homa Bay had a choice to make between Philip Okundi and Raila Odinga? In fact, that was what the contest was.
That is true. And the choice was fraud, because if you really don't want democracies to thrive in your area and you know what good leaders you need, as Uhuru Kenyatta, as Kalonzo Musyoka, as Mudavadi, you step back so that you see who is emerging strong. But this was Okundi versus Raila. But the question is,
let me ask you this. Yes. Raila has made it clear he's going for presidency, 2017.
Yes.
Even during the campaign, he was saying, this is between me and Jubilee. And there was no Jubilee candidate on the ground, if you remember.
Yes.
He was campaigning and saying, this election is between me and Jubilee.
Yes.
Why would you want him to sit back and leave his party to lose if he's interested in having a seat in parliament for the numbers?
Look at this. In all the pictures or the images that have appeared in the nation, that appeared in the standards and all the newspapers, it was a big rider and a small Kajwang, and that picture was pounded on the minds of the Kenyans.
You have given him enough time. Can I respond now?
It is essentially an unfair play in a democratic language. Let Kajwang and Okundi, both are from that region, fight it out. It's not like you are getting somebody from another region to fight this. These are people from the same region.
Yeah.
And they all wanted nomination in ODM, but Okundi couldn't get it because of the men in white. You know, they came and scattered the whole day.
Can I respond? Can I respond?
Yes.
Can I respond?
We'll get back to him.
You see,
but here.
You heard where I started, that politics is about perception. And there is a very, very strong,
a little louder.
There's a very, very strong push to get Raila out of the equation. And you can see it's not only, this wasn't a Luo Nyanza issue as it's trying to say. There were external forces, and you can see the coincidence of what Kagwanja is saying and what Reggae was saying. Yes. Raila, don't come and campaign in Homa Bay. What Oner was saying. Raila, don't come and campaign in Homa Bay. And what Kidero was saying, let Homa Bay decide. Tell me any place in the world where a party leader abandons their candidate. Let me give you a graphic example. Can you milk a cow without its own calf? That's what you want Raila to do.
You give
to abandon his calf. How will the calf nyonya so that milk comes out?
You give it Pollard.
What they want, they know the influence of Raila, and they know that the only way they can ever have any inroad there is to tell Raila, you stay out and let me battle your candidate. Politically, you would be a fool
But debate
to leave it. But let me go.
Wait a
No,
moment.
you
Yes.
have talked it after.
Yes.
Let me say.
Adam's
He's
finished.
talking of democracy deficit.
Yes.
What about Central Kenya? Since independence, which community has never voted any other community? Tell me. 1992, votes divided, but between Kibaki and Matiba. 1997, votes all Kibaki. 2007, votes all Kibaki. 2013,
I don't think that's
votes
true.
all
That's not true.
So, what I'm trying to say,
You know,
mobilizing
we have
around
an
a leader.
We have an ODM MP in Meru.
No, I'm talking of the presidency.
Purwaburi.
Yeah,
I'm
even
talking of the
then, even then.
But Mount Kenya, that is Meru. That's Meru.
Even
That is.
let me
Okay, finish. Then we'll get
so
to
what
that
I'm
point.
trying to say
Yes.
is that the same template he's trying to employ in Nyanza, he's not employing in Central
in
Kenya.
Central.
So if you want to apply it, then apply it across board.
Let's
And I think democracy, when you have a strong leader, like you have strong leaders, like Mwalimu Nyerere was, like Mandela was, you don't blame them for people following them.
Yeah.
let me introduce a concept.
Somebody says, in addition to what this is Nudin Ali in Mombasa. It says, good morning. In fact, it's so hard to win an election against ODM in Nyanza. So far, Raila is still popular there. This is a signal to Kidero and Okundi, who should not have contested once the nomination had been cast. Do you hold, as you go to answer, that first, Raila is still popular in Nyanza?
It's not popular.
What is democracy equivalent to
Raila
loss?
being
That's
lost,
the question
yes.
being posed
Yes,
here.
yeah.
let me answer that question and complicate this discussion a little bit.
Okay.
What Professor and I would teach in the university, using concept, not using examples of and comparison of who beat his wife yesterday and should I beat mine today.
Yes.
The interesting bit is the concept of garrison politics. Garrison politics is when you had your community like cows. And you ensure that you had I'm not saying. No, I'm not saying. Let me finish.
Okay.
The allegory is good enough.
The garrison politics is herding people together,
Yes.
and then moving them like chattels whenever you want in order to bargain for larger game.
Yes.
That politics is common in Jamaica. You're going to find it in many other places. It's a concept in politics called garrison politics.
Right.
In Kenya, personally, I've been concerned about this garrison politics, and you find it in many communities.
Yes.
Now, it's not to say that it's only Nyanza that has democratic deficit. You and I should be pushing for larger ideals than just looking at the communities. But in Nyanza, it's more intense and has intensified from 1992.
Yes.
There is no, the rural community has voted as a bloc. And it is not because that's what they would want.
Why?
It is because the logic of garrison politics means the boundaries are policed.
The problem I have with this garrison
Politics.
It throws very big words.
Yes.
Do you blame the leader who has a genuine interest in mobilizing? If in fact I was a leader, I would want to mobilize the whole country behind me to get elected, to get power. Do you blame the leader who is trying to get all the people behind him, or the people
I wish you could
who are following him? If you, in this case, looks like the leader is being prosecuted for having a magnet over his people.
Yeah.
If you want to garrison the
Which
country,
politician does not want to have that?
And I would even ask, if Jomo Kenyatta had a hold on the Kikuyu, and now his son Uhuru Kenyatta has a hold on the Kikuyu, do you blame Uhuru Kenyatta?
No, that's not what we are talking about.
That's what you're talking about.
It is a deliberate politics.
Let me say this.
Would be quite happy to put the whole basket of Rift Valley in, and he has.
And that's why he
largely.
But he has not put the mechanisms. He has not put the mechanism to do that.
What Raila has used that the others have not used. Let's look at those mechanisms.
What you have
look like he has enslaved or garrison people.
Don't use strong words. Otherwise, my concept of garrison will be abused.
I've heard people saying
the whole issue is that
people of Nyanza are in political slavery.
I want to ask you.
So when Ochuodo, when Tuju, when Kidero, when Okidi says that we want to set the rural politics free, they are literally referring to this garrison politics. In other words, you cannot break in and you cannot break out if you are inside.
What do you mean you cannot?
In other words, whenever our election comes, you know who is so and so supporting.
Yes.
In Kikuyu land, and I want to give the example that the problem we had in the last election was that the Kikuyus are not in that garrison politics. If they were, we would all have voted Kalonzo Musyoka.
They are garrison
but
at
because
the presidential
no,
not at the whatever.
There was an agreement in 2008 that after Kibaki to be Kalonzo. But because you cannot carry the Kikuyus together, it became a very difficult thing. And Kalonzo Musyoka was very angry and bitter that he was betrayed by the Kikuyus, therefore went the other side. But for me, from a political science point of view, is that the Kikuyu broke out of that garrison politics, and they chose who they wanted, irrespective of who Kibaki would have wanted.
No, look here, that's a lie.
Now, in Nyanza, you can't do that. You know,
that's a lie. Let me tell you why that's a lie. You see, he's saying he's arguing from a political science perspective. That's not a political science perspective. Let me tell you. You see, when we were going for independence, and KANU was the majority party, the colonialists colluding with KADU insisted on a Majimbo system. But KANU knew that once we got independence, we will not implement it. That is the same Kibaki-Kalonzo thing. Fast track that to NAC MOU of 2002. When LDP demanded that this government will be 50-50, the NAK wing accepted, because had they not accepted, LDP would not have supported Kibaki. But immediately Kibaki became president, they threw away that MOU. That's the same thing that happened to Kalonzo. And that's the most likely thing that will happen to William Ruto after.
William Ruto knew how to negotiate
for that time to
come.
Yes, but I'm telling you, I'm a political scientist. I'm telling you.
Will be
so the point is that the MOU or the agreement that brought about Jubilee was a well-thought process, taking about 4 years and negotiated and taking advantage of that. So the
old habits die hard, I can tell you.
And it is not old habits or new habits. We are talking about a democracy that is in the making, and who Nyanza has democratic deficit.
No, let me tell you this.
Let him finish.
And that deficit, I'm saying, is as a result of cumulative processes of creating this garrison politics. That if you are you want to break out of that garrison, you can't. And if you are outside, you can't get in. And if you are inside, you can't get out.
When Anyang and James Orengo went against Raila, did they win?
They lost, and they realized that it is the people who are telling them you are going in the wrong direction. That is the direction. And that's why I was giving these two examples of Tanzania and South Africa. In Tanzania, if you are not in CCM, count yourself out. In South Africa, if you are not in ANC, count yourself out.
I don't think so. It's not true.
It's
and
true. Give me an example.
Julius Malema is out, and he has 5. No, he has 5 members of parliament. He did not win.
Yeah.
But he has 5.
But that's my point.
No, well, we are saying if you don't like
even Okundi can try and get 27,000.
But I mean, even in the last election, Obado, for example, the
yes.
governor for whatever, won an election.
Yes.
But the people voted for Raila at the top. But at the local level, there were sports here and there.
Yeah, but what we are seeing, what we are saying is that this garrison politics is beginning to have the cracks. That's why Okundi has 27,000. Well, this is the point we are making. There is progress here.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you. He has come here with the sole purpose that the statistics there have sent such a strong message. Kagwanja has to come and revise it and spin it that don't lose hope. Those whom we were capping on, don't lose hope. You got at least 27,000 votes. But I think those statistics have clearly said that ODM and Raila Odinga are still focused. Their message is still resonating with the people, and that this
And what message is that?
No.
What message is that?
The message is that CORD and ODM, for example, that have fought for the democratic space, that is talking of the democratic deficit, the democratic space that now want to be compromised through security laws that violate the Constitution. People in that area have faced the brunt of state measures that are illegal before. And they're saying that we are seeing a leader who stands for the people of Kenya and who will lead from the front. And the psyche of the people, and I think Alonso said it during Fidel's funeral, that what I like about these people from this patch, that when you see an injustice, you don't cringe, you don't back down, you face it.
What do you say to the fact that during the campaign the last day, Ababu Namamba went apologizing for the nomination?
Yes, and I think as a political scientist, I'll say this, that ODM must style up. ODM must, from now henceforth, just like they did in Kajiado, be able to do credible nominations, because a people can support you, but when you undermine their ability to also do their contribution in terms of investing in the party and choosing the leader they want, then you can lose their confidence at some point. And I think Ababu, as the Secretary General, did the right thing to go and apologize to the people of Homa Bay.
There's an acknowledgement that the nomination were not the most democratic.
I mean,
they were done within circumstances that were tight.
Yeah.
But let me hear.
I would agree with Adam. You know, all parties, including ODM, CORD and Jubilee and others, will have to style up in terms of internal democracy. And on that one we agreed, and that is an indication that our democracy is a democracy in the making. But what we have seen in Nyanza and in ODM itself, from the Kasarani debacle, of the men in black, is the same that we saw the men in white in Homa Bay during the nomination. So democracy has not moved an inch in that regard. Let me finish.
The thing is, let me just put the facts in context so that you can explain properly. The nomination in Homa Bay was conducted within a constricted time frame. They said that they could not conduct direct selection. Let me explain. Yeah. And so they said that elected leaders and delegates would come to choose the candidate. It flopped. That's what they tried to replicate at the national level to get a compromise candidate. Now, at that level, in terms of democratic practice, is there a recognition that circumstance sometimes may not facilitate a clear democratic process?
It's the images.
And what should be the result?
It's the images that are in the minds of Kenyans.
Yeah.
Black men kicking ballot boxes and white men kicking ballot boxes. Yeah. I mean, whether it's time or whatever, it doesn't augur well for our democracy, whether it is in Central, Western, Nyanza, wherever. People kicking ballot boxes should not be something that should be in our mind. That's one.
Let's say that's a trait of the people of that area. How they express their dissent is violence.
But it is no, it's okay. I mean, you hear what he's saying.
Yeah.
That
he's saying a fact, because when Gormaya wins or loses, stones are still thrown.
Let me go on with the argument I'm making. But that violence in itself is bringing in another image now being expressed by the dissenters. And it is very important that we begin to decode the messages of the dissenters. The fact that they got 27,000 and the fact that the voter turnout was the way it was, you said it's normal, which is okay, is indicating that there is another agenda which they are asking for, and which is what is identified with Kidero, and which these Harambes and so on. Let me finish. These Harambes that Kidero is doing and others are doing across there, the Tujus and others, the Okundis, the Ochuodos, what they are trying to do is to say that if you look at the statistics that are emerging now, Ruo Nyanza is ranking almost behind northeastern Kenya, the entire region, in terms of development indicators.
Yes.
What's your source so that people can go on Google?
No,
so that they,
look at all.
correctly, they
Look
correctly...
Indicator, let's assume that, let's take that for a fact for now.
Yeah, just
What's
go
his
to-
source?
Right.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
an academician.
No,
In
I didn't
academic, you
come here
don't...
to lecture.
In
What I
academics,
came
you
to say,
don't
he has
say
no
something
references,
without
footnotes.
telling us your source.
No, there are journals we publish in where you don't need footnotes. You know that.
No, but for the public that you are talking
Are
to...
you okay? Let me get to you, Adam Solo. Are you disputing the fact that the development levels between Central and
No,
Nyanza
he said
traditionally-
Northeastern. He said Northeastern. But let me just put that in perspective.
Yeah.
You see, the politics of this country have been politics that you can call patron-client politics. Patron-client in the sense that when I am the president, then my client is my community or my region.
Yes.
And there's no dispute that when Jomo Kenyatta was in power, Central Kenya benefited than the rest of the country. There is no dispute that when Moi was in power, Central Kenya benefited more than the rest, and so on. So that is not in dispute, but that's not what the issue... No, let me finish. You, when you're talking, I let you finish.
All right.
Let me go
Briefly,
back to what he was
this.
saying
Yeah.
about Okundi getting 27,000 votes. William Oduol got 80,000 votes in the Siaya.
Actually, 60,000.
60,000.
60,000.
He got. So that's not something new
But
that
Colonel
he's telling
Rasanga
us.
still won the...
And Colonel Rasanga still won.
With
But
what? With slightly...
with 120. But that didn't send any message that there is a new uprising in this area. It simply showed that people can also say, on this one, the party, we are disagreeing with you, and we are giving the votes to this other particular candidate. And I think that what Kagwanja is trying to drive around with this concept of garrison politics, I think that I agree with you that the ODM elections in Kasarani were not good for the eye. There were international people. We all watched. It wasn't good. But I also would like to ask this. What about the other parties? At least ODM tried to do an election which flopped. What about TN? Has it done election? What about URP? Has it done election? What about Wiper? Has it done any election that you see campaigns the way ODM was done? So ODM, even in terms of just showing the way to try and do it, is on the front. It didn't work.
Yes. I think an admission needs to be made, in my view. Let me put it to you this way, Prof, that there is disagreement, perhaps, on the level of local elective positions. But in terms of who, at the national level, that region supports, there is no challenge to Raila.
But the problem...
That is being reflected, flip it this way. His influence then comes down when he says he points anywhere, they will go there.
What I'm trying to signal here is that there's a new discourse coming to Nyanza. And the discourse is not about political competition. Let me finish.
Yes.
There's a new discourse coming to Nyanza. And the discourse is not about political competition, who wins, who doesn't win.
Yes.
It is what politics in Nyanza delivers. When we say that more children in Nyanza sleep hungry than in Eastern Kenya, when we say that more children in Nyanza are likely to die before the age of 5 in Nyanza than in Coast Province, what the dissenters are saying is that you need to center politics on development. It is during...
okay, how does that address the particular... How does that address the politics that we are talking about now?
Because
the election.
The election, Okundi and the Kideros and others, and the Tujus, are taking the discourse of development. That is what is challenging. The other competitions, whether you are in this...
so the others are not...
He doesn't have Harambee. Yes, he doesn't. And when Kibera, when you talk about the rural quote-unquote diaspora in Nairobi,
yes.
During that 20 years, I mean, Kibera became, slum tourism. For the first time, we got the concept of slum tourism. People coming to see how people can live as poor people. I mean, that had to be changed because it's an eyesore.
I'm not going to respond to that.
So the discourse of development is what is now evolving, and I am sure that is going to pick up. The discourse of development.
Somebody is likely to tell you that Kibera was not the only slum in Nairobi.
Yeah, and there are 12 slums in Nairobi.
And they all suffer the same. Was it so?
Have the others
develop it?
Why did Kibera become?
I mean, that is
no. I can see where he wants to take us, but I'm not going to allow him by giving him
pigeonholing.
Yeah.
Right, let's see what your
Look here,
response
he's
are.
told us that Kidero, Tuju, I don't know who is taking the politics of development.
Yes.
Let me ask you, how many Harambes can you conduct and be able to bring development bigger than devolving resources that ODM and CORD fought for under devolution? So that you are saying that even the local person can be a little bit corrupt. Yeah?
That's not true. It is not called that for
It
devolution.
is CORD, wasn't the NAK fighting devolution?
I think let me tie this conversation down. I think it boils down to two philosophies.
Yes.
One is the philosophy that of representation, that people are elected to go and bring resources of the national government or the cake down to the people. Kagwanja's philosophy is that leaders...
Individuals whom you don't know where they have gotten their money from.
Not individually.
Which is not
illicit money.
But it
not individually.
Illicit money.
But you
not the legislative politics, but it's the popular politics.
It's centering development in politics, as opposed to
Makali,
centering.
You are a political scientist. If he was a true political scientist, everybody knows, and we teach our students, quoting David Easton and Harold Laswell, that politics is who gets what, when, and how, or the authoritative allocation of resources and values. So if you fall into the trap of the Kideros, you are not a political scientist, my friend.
Not really.
No, let's leave it at that.
Let me ask another question. What do you say about the security laws? The security laws that were passed in Parliament
have been suspended now. Some were passed.
No. The security laws. I mean, the security laws were necessary. The question was whether there was enough consultation, and the consultation might actually have ended with the same if it was. Remember from March.
That answer is a bit cagey. The thing is, whether there were consultations or not, the final result of the laws, as they are, accept or like. But
look at it this way, from the time the laws came out, challenged as they are, we've not had a single terrorist attack.
But they are suspended, they are not in action.
Just 8 of them, although they are almost 200. They are only almost 280 law, parts of that law. Remember, they are laws, it's not law.
Yeah.
Only 8 were suspended.
About 101
yes.
that were proposed.
Yes.
No, but the ones which were stopped were the ones in which you want to take us back to infringing our rights, to coming and planting things on us, and
don't bring us versus them here. I am part of you. I am
saying
gentlemen, now professors, listen, political scientists. Now this is not between us. This is perspectives that are supposed to be beyond us.
I think so.
Now let me finalize this discussion. We have a minute each. Just taking lessons from the by-election in Homa Bay. In a nutshell, 1 minute, what do you expect to come out of Narok? And secondly, is this any pointer? Kajiado Central, rather. And is this a pointer to 2017? Will there be a change if people run, or whichever parties they choose, in that area of ODM dominated? You, and then we finalize.
I think the first thing I want to say is that there was a very concerted effort, both within Homa Bay and outside CORD, to try and make an inroad into ODM, CORD, and Raila Odinga's base, because you know that the first way you fall a tree is to cut its branches, and therefore the move was to try and cut Raila's branches and ODM and CORD's branches, and that has failed emphatically. That is number one. Does that tell you what will happen in 2017? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that usually parties or coalitions that are out of power usually face a real onslaught from the ruling coalition or party, including through the state machinery. And I think that CORD and ODM have held their ground so well that CORD and ODM have lost 1 seat in Kisii to Jubilee, but they have also won another seat from Jubilee in Mathare, Nairobi. So basically we are saying that the status quo as of now remains. And I think that is kudos to the opposition, that without having the state machinery and the goodwill of the government, they have stood their ground. As for Kajiado, I think as of now, because we have not yet seen the campaigns, I think for now I would say it is a toss-up. I can't conclusively say where it will go. For now I can say that it can go either way. And I think that going forward into 2017, I think that what Kenyans, as Kagwanja correctly said, that we shouldn't pigeon ourselves into us versus them because this is our country. I think that what Kenyans want, and I've always repeated, let's have free, fair, transparent, and verifiable elections. Let's create the institutions and structures that make everything overboard so that whoever loses an Salimu Amri,
that it was fair.
That it was
a fair
free
contest.
and a fair
All right.
contest.
Your final
Let me make three major points. That first, all the political parties in Kenya, as indicated from Homa Bay, have a problem with internal nominations. And internal democracy is the root of national democracy. Therefore, they have something to do there. But Homa Bay's results, as we have seen them, is an indication that freedom is coming to Nyanza. Freedom is coming to Nyanza. And this freedom is not just the rhetoric of freedom. It's a rhetoric about centering development, because if outside the context of us versus them, Nyanza is part of us. And the moment you have other parts developing and Nyanza lagging behind, that means that Adams and others will always make this argument that Kenyatta helped the Kikuyus, Kenyatta is having this, and so on. Whereas it is the kind of politics you have chosen that is producing a kind of a development discourse that removes others and does not allow others to take part in this development. That's the second point. The third point is about Kajiado. I think the Kajiado is the acid test of 2017. And how it is going to play out is going to indicate the muscle that is coming. Because Kajiado is a fair and neutral ground. Unlike in Nyanza, unlike in Central, Kajiado is a fair and neutral ground. And the fact that, Jubilee is doing what it is doing and ODM is doing what it's doing means that the stakes are high. And the stakes are high to the point that it is really the acid. About Mathare, I think you should lead your politics better in the sense that Jubilee won that seat. Jubilee won that seat.
I'm talking of the one that...
lost even more. I mean,
no, I'm talking of... Stephen Kariuki is from which party? Surely. You're talking of facts.
No, but where is Wanjiru now?
Okay.
Come on.
We live in
I told you, this guy.
God won the election, but it was a Jubilee person who was sitting in. That's what
moles. You see moles? You've seen moles.
I want to thank you, Professor Adam Zono from
you have seen the way they plant moles. Even in Homa Bay, they plant moles.
Professor Peter, always a pleasure having you here from Africa. Political scientist dissecting our politics from Homa Bay. And in fact, we go back to Homa Bay now, where Francis Gashuri is waiting on us to tell us the final word from that election, the final results, and of course the handing out of the victory certificate, I guess, from Homa Bay. Francis Gashuri, over to you there.
Let the peace of God.
Thank you. Good morning, Makali and the team there, Power Breakfast team. It's been a long night, and probably it's even going to be a longer day here for the people of Homa Bay County as they celebrate the victory of one Moses Otieno Kajwang. The provisional results were announced last night at about 3 a.m. and it was clear from the onset, as soon as the results started trickling in here at the County Tallying Center at the Agricultural Training College in Homa Bay County, that Moses Kajwang was leading from the front right from the moment the results started trickling in. And that was the situation until the end, when eventually he was declared winner with 127,000 votes. And of course it was deemed initially, especially during the campaign period, like it was going to be a closely contested by-election. However, that was not the case because the runners-up in this contest, Philip Okoth Okundi of Maendeleo Democratic Party, garnered only 27,000 votes. Fred Rabongo of the National Agenda Party could only manage 2,000 votes, while Bernard Owor of the National Vision Party at least managed 1,000 votes. But the rest, the other four candidates, did not even get more than 500 votes. In fact, who probably could have been a bigger loser is Hilary Alila. You remember he gave the late Gerard Otieno Kajwang a run for his money during the 2013 senatorial contest. However, during this contest, he could only garner 400 votes. Clearly, the tide has shifted, so to say. And so at in about an hour or so, the county returning officer, Mr. Morris Raria, will be handing the certificate to Moses Otieno Kajwang. That is the certificate that he's going to present to the Speaker of the Senate, Ekwe Ethuro, so that he can get his slot in the Senate of the Republic of Kenya and effectively fill the void left by the demise of his elder brother, the late Gerard Otieno Kajwang. And so it's been a night of celebrations here in Homa Bay County, especially for Kajwang's supporters. And the celebrations kicked in as soon as the results started streaming in, and the celebrations continued throughout the night, and you expect even more jubilation today when he is formally declared the winner. Of course, we had to wait for the returning officers from all the 8 constituencies in this county to present their documentation and the other polling materials back to the county returning officers, so that the aggregate can be found, and at the end of the day, the legal provisions, especially in conducting a by-election, once they have been fulfilled, that's when the man who has won this contest will be declared formally. But as it stands now, the provisional results are not expected in any way to be different from the final tally or from the formal results that will be announced by Mr. Morris Raria in about an hour's time. And of course, the climax of the event this morning will be the handing over of the certificate to Moses Otieno Kajwang to formally now become the senator of Homa Bay County. Of course, he is now senator-elect, and he substantively becomes senator once he's sworn in by Ekwe Ethuro. We understand a good number of opposition leaders will be here. There is also a likelihood that CORD leader Raila Odinga could also be coming here. Remember, he camped here literally. He was here at least thrice and conducted extensive campaigns across the county, bearing in mind that there was word out there that this was not only a contest between Moses Otieno Kajwang and Philip Okundi of Maendeleo Democratic Movement, but also to a great extent a contest between Raila Odinga and leaders from especially South Nyanza who have been critical of his leadership. And word out there was that this was what you'd say a Kidero Raila contest. But of course, the results clearly showing that Raila Odinga still is the political supremo, especially here in South Nyanza region. And of course, now maybe putting to rest the doubts that he had lost grip in this county. So basically, that's all for now. We will definitely be able to update our viewers in our subsequent bulletins on the jubilation and the celebrations that will be accompanying the handing of the certificate to Moses Otieno Kajwang, who whitewashed his 7 contestants, or his 7 rivals in the Homa Bay senatorial contest that was conducted yesterday. Of course, the voter turnout was not as high as expected, slightly lower than 50%, but according to the polling officials, that is generally the indication that come elections, turnout is rarely as huge as one would expect. But still, huge turnout or no huge turnout, a winner will be declared, and a senator has been found for the people of Homa Bay County. Back to you, Makali, and the Power Breakfast team. Definitely 1 o'clock, we'll be able to show our viewers the celebrations that will accompany the handing over of the certificate to Moses Otieno Kajwang. Back to you.